For my second game, I'm up against the player whose names is all zeros, and I think it's actually a person called Solofid maybe, who I think is a fairly well-known player, and I believe this is the same person. So, we're facing fairly tough competition. They have a lot of ribbons and things, so this deck is actually hold up pretty well against people who know what they're doing. It's not just something that is used to kind of cheese the lower ranks. Like some other, you can certainly play with almost anything lower down, but I think this really stood up to a lot of, good players and good decks. So I think it's definitely something worth people's consideration. And here I generally like to put the Wisp in front because it sort of hinders their movement until they kill it off, and them killing it off gives you the mana on your next turn, which is a turn sooner than if you have to attack it in. So I do like to put it in front because I think it better restricts them, their movement. And here, them choosing to dispel it is fine with us. They're, using one of their dispels, which is very, very strong against so many minions in our deck. And all they're accomplishing is preventing us from having that mana, which our deck is designed around and is definitely hugely beneficial. But we've built the deck in such a way that we can function without that. And, because you can't rely on drawing a single 3 of, on turn 1, because it's something that you need to play on turn 2 for it to be effective, or turn 1 on 2 mana, you need to play it. So, them dispelling it is not a major deal, and the deck does not fall apart if you don't get that Crystal Wisp. It does help, and your win rate probably goes up when you play it, but the deck does fairly well if you just keep to the same strategy, but you might be a little bit further behind than if you were able to accelerate. And I think your minions definitely do get better if they're played a little bit ahead of curve, because the effects just have a bigger impact, and the bodies in this deck are not generally very large. So my opponent has a ton of options here because we haven't really been able to clear the board at all. We weren't really able to access any of their minions with our general, and we just played our Dolotus this turn. So right now they could go kill it off, and we don't mind because a Tombstone would allow us to develop other things safely. We don't actually have a play for next turn, and they actually have a Dancing Blades. So they're able to play it before us and get some tempo. So we're going to have to swap something in, and we'll probably choose the Chromatic Hold. I keep the 2 higher cost minions because I'm figuring that we'd like to still have plays for the next 2 turns, and if we were to have to skip this turn, having some high impact cards to catch us up would be the most beneficial thing. So right here, I just choose to, I don't really have a play that I'm happy with, so I just choose to play my Dancing Blades to do damage to their Dancing Blades, and this way I can try to just clear off their board. This is certainly not an optimal play, but it was the position we're in, and you just have to keep making the most of your situations, and when your cards don't exactly line up with the situation, you just have to try to keep delaying the game until you draw the cards that allow you to get that big swing turn. So my opponent is playing something further back, which usually means it's a Shadow Sister. And this deck does try to play pretty aggressively starting in the mid game. So a Shadow Sister coming down against Cassyva is so tough. It's so tough because it makes the plan of going face almost completely impossible. It's very, very difficult to ever go face once they have developed the Shadow Sister. So in this situation, I want to kill off the Shadow Sister, but my only real way to do that is to play the Hearth Sister and then attack it with my Dancing Blades and then use, the Bloodborne spell. So instead I decide to just play the Bone Reaper. We're off the face plan right now. We're not going to trade damage. We're just going to develop our Provoke. and kill off the Healing Mystic. My opponent's only on 6 mana, so it's not a Spectral Revenant turn. Spectral Revenant is, of course, hugely dangerous for us because we're only at 20 life, which seems rather high, but Spectral Revenant can make pretty short work of that. And my opponent chooses just to kill off the Bone Reaper, and then actually, I believe they use the Scar on it and just try to develop some more Shadow Creep. So Cassyva also has a very powerful late game threat in the Obliterates and the Spectral Revenants. So we don't have unlimited time, so we need to start constructing a scenario where we can kill off this Shadow Sister. And we can always just use the aspect of the Fox on it, but we want to save those for Spectral Revenants because the rest of our removal doesn't line up particularly well against it. You don't want to Hailstone Prison it. Chromatic Cold does 2 damage to it, but doesn't necessarily kill it. So, and attacking it with your face does another 6 damage to you, and you've probably already taken 4 to 6 damage from it when it rushed down. So, like we said, rushed minions are a huge issue, and that's why I eventually put in the Night Watcher. But I don't believe I had it in this game. So my opponent plays down a Reaper of the Nine Moons, and this is a pretty huge threat because we have pretty large minions in our deck, and them getting a random one and dealing with our Pandora is something that we don't want to deal with. Oh, we actually do have the Night Watcher. We draw it. So the Night Watcher gives us huge amounts of insurance against a Spectral Revenant. So right now we are just going to kill off the Shadow Sister, and I actually didn't realize that the Fox had taken damage. That was a Celebrity Fox. Celebrity? I think I'm doing that. Celebrity Fox. So I thought I could just hit it twice, but that wasn't the case. So, oh, this is using the final version of the deck. So I'm able to just kill it off with the Pandora. I don't want to get damage on the Pandora because it's just a huge value engine, especially now that we have the Night Watcher, meaning that Spectral Revenant isn't going to be something that comes down and puts a ton of pressure on us. So right now we're just playing around Obliterate, and they only have 3 creeps, and they could probably get a 4th soon. So we want to keep our Pandora pretty high health, so it can't just be obliterated off of the board. And the Night Watcher will survive as long as my opponent doesn't have 9 mana, because then they can ping it with the Abyssal Scar and then kill it off with Obliterate. So my opponent's able to dispel my Pandora, but that means they can't dispel the Night Watcher, which is also very threatening. And right here, I'm just going to play down the Ancient Grove and try to pick a good position for it, because I want to just be able to keep it, aggressively placed while also allowing my general some safe squares to retreat to, because even this Fox from that the Reaper of the Nine Moons was transformed into could start to deal some damage to me. And I decide to just start, applying pressure to my opponent by attacking with my Pandora. Now that it's dispelled, I don't mind as much if it dies off. And even with my General and then my Bloodborne spell, just aggressively trying to end the game before my opponent's huge Cassyva late game threats start coming down. And my Night Watcher and Ancient Grove do protect me in some ways, and they also make it so if my Pandora or Night Watcher die, I will get a Provoke minion out of it, so that will be nice. Although having 1/1s against Cassyva is generally not overly helpful. So one of the main weapons Cassyva has against Provoke minions is the Demonic Lure, and it's going to be very difficult for my Ancient Grove to chase down the enemy general, and with the Shadow Sister allowing her to gain so much health and the constant poke on my Pandora, it's going to be difficult to win with just those minions. So I'm going to need to find a way to get the Ancient Grove back in the fight. So I get a Sworn Sister, and I get 2 polarities, which is not generally the most helpful spell. It will allow me to do something like change my Night Watcher's attack and maybe do a bit more damage, or kill off the Shadow Sister by switching its health to 2, so I have a few different options, but none really, strike me as particularly promising this turn. So I'm going to just hold the cards, and you don't need to go crazy. We're not, again, we have the defense of the Night Watcher, and we have the defense of the Ancient Grove, so other than the Obliterate, which is definitely building power right now, but I believe it's only up to 5, which means it won't kill the Ancient Grove, we don't have too much to worry about immediately. Now, when we see Rites of the Undervault come down, we know that we could be in trouble. However, one good thing is that if my opponent plays Rites of the Undervault, they have a full hand. And if they play just one spell after that, they only have 2 mana, so playing one spell isn't particularly unlikely, then I can return something to their hand to destroy it. So I have the option of returning the Shadow Sister to their hand and destroying it. But instead, I hope that I can get just maximum value out of this Frostburn and use the polarity to make it kill the Shadow Sister as well. And now I'm able to start trying to corner the enemy general. And I'm trading in my minions rather aggressively because, again, we think we lose to Obliterate. So we want to make... We don't think we lose to Obliterate. We think Obliterate is the card that gives our opponent the best chance to come back. So we want to make that Obliterate as bad as possible, and I think we do that by trading in our minions for damage now rather than letting them get swept up in the massive AoE. The downside, of course, is that our minions dying allows our opponent more opportunity for shadow creep, but I think the concern of getting their health down outweighs that small disadvantage. So right now we do a Hearth Sister, which does allow our Ancient Grove to get in the fight. That's one of those type of things that we'd be looking for. And with the positioning of our Night Watcher, we would be able to chase down the enemy general rather easily and finish them off with the Ancient Grove plus our Bloodborne spell. But our opponent has another Shadow Sister and another Demonic Lure, which gains them a life as well. And then attacking in will gain them another one, and the Abyssal Scar will gain them a 3rd life point. So they go all the way back up to, I believe they end up at 12 life points at the end of this turn. 12 HP, hit points. Maybe? Or was it just 11? Or did they take 2 damage? Okay, 9. And then 10. I apologize, I'm all over the place. So, in this situation, unfortunately, switching our Ancient Grove's health and attack with the polarity doesn't do much here. So we draw a second Hearth Sister, which is just amazing here, because our opponent will gain 2 health from the attacks, but we're able to Hailstone the enemy Shadow Sister so that we can attack without giving them health. And we're able to double Hearth Sister our minions into the fight, and then finish off opponent with a Bloodborne spell. So a pretty cool game against an opponent. I think our Night Watcher went a long way towards shutting down Spectral Revenant, because we never saw one the entire game, and that Night Watcher stuck for quite a few turns. And the Ancient Grove, it's just its raw body, was able to really pose a huge threat to our opponent. And then we'll just have one last game, which was the game that got me to S rank. So thanks for watching, everybody.